Okay. Hey. Well, good morning, good afternoon. I know it's close to lunchtime. Great to be back in Palm Beach County. I want to thank our sheriff for hosting us and thank him for all he has done and his department has done to uphold law and order down here in one of our most populous counties. We also have FDLE Commissioner Mark Glass, who has spearheaded a lot of initiatives for us, including a lot of things we're doing to combat illegal immigration. And then we've got the legend now, my representative Mike Caruso, who has stood strong for what the voters asked, even against the wishes of a lot of pressure coming down from politicians in Tallahassee. And we in Florida have taken the issue of illegal immigration very seriously ever since I became governor. We were able to ban sanctuary cities my first year that had been discussed for years in Florida, had never been done. We've also done things to remove enticements like mandatory E-Verify. We have reporting requirements for citizenship at the emergency rooms. That's caused the cost to go down. So we've done much more. Send people to the southern border. When Biden opened it, we were the first state to go help. I think probably 20 to 25 states ended up helping at some time, but we had both local and state folks that would have gone down there to help that mission. We also have missions, and I know the sheriff's involved as well, interdicting vessels coming in with illegal aliens, and we've been doing that for pretty much, I think, probably 2 years straight, where we've really been supplementing what the Coast Guard is doing. So on and on it goes. Now, the election was a very clear mandate in November that this problem needs to be solved once and for all. And yes, there are things like going after the cartels, which the president is doing and is right to do, securing the border and building the wall and doing 100%. But then we have the problem of both. We need to deter people from having incentive to come here, even apart from those other issues being addressed. But then we also have to deal with folks who don't have a right to be in our country and in our state, and we want to make sure that we're doing all we can so that the operations that the Trump administration is doing are going to be successful. So I knew after the election this was going to be a big deal, and I had spoken to the president a bunch of times during the transition. He always would say, like, I've got to do the immigration. They had been working on a lot of things. We knew these executive orders were coming out, and what those executive orders are doing in part is they're really activating all the different levers where you can then use local and state officials, resources, and law enforcement to supplement this. Now, Sheriff Bradshaw is already doing some of this. We have some others that are already doing, but we don't have enough being done in the state of Florida. We need all hands on deck. We'll obviously provide money. It's not an issue. But they have programs that you can really make an impact here, and it'll be a force multiplier. We just signed an agreement with Florida Highway Patrol and Department of Homeland Security to deputize Highway Patrol officers to serve as immigration enforcement agents as well. So they find someone on the side of the road, driving drunk, pull them over, someone's illegal alien, they can then get them right into immigration. So there's a lot of great possibilities there. So we knew all this was coming down the pike. We knew that by inviting state and local participation, we had to do all we could to maximize the impact of that. So a few weeks ago, I called the special session of the Florida legislature to deal with this. The leaders of the legislature said that it was premature and that the issue of illegal immigration was not urgent and it could wait many months. Most of our voters have been waiting 4 years for this to be addressed in a major way. They think it's urgent. I think it's urgent. Then the leaders said doing a special session was a stunt. It's not a stunt when you're upholding the law. It's not a stunt when you're removing these criminal aliens. It's not a stunt when you have processes in place that can prevent some of the tragedies that we've seen throughout our state and throughout our country. So I've been very supportive of what the administration's doing. I know we have to get the state in a really strong posture to be able to maximize the potential here. And so even though they were saying it was a stunt, they didn't want to do it, I knew the voters wanted us to do it. They expect you to do it. So when they met for special session early this week, they, I think, just wanted to gavel in and gavel out. They weren't able to do that. They had to do their own session, and they did this bill, and it didn't do the things that needed to be done, and in fact, it actually kneecapped some of the things we're already doing. So a very, very grotesque, weak piece of legislation. They thought if they named it the Trump Act that people would somehow think, oh, this is like really, really strong. I've never seen the reaction from the grassroots as negative against the legislature as I've seen with what they've tried to do with this. Now, we put out a series of very strong proposals that would be effective. And look, I don't need pride of ownership. If you've got better, stronger proposals, do it. But don't try to do window dressing and then do legislation that will actually make the problem worse. And so there was a lot of pressure brought to bear on some of these legislators to vote. You know, Mike stood strong, which isn't easy. You know, they retaliate, they do all these things. But, you know, they really put their members in bad spot because this was like an 85-page bill. They churned it out. The members didn't have time to read the bill. This is like Nancy Pelosi. You pass the bill to find out what is in the bill. And so there are a lot of members that took one of the worst votes I've ever seen members of the legislature take when they voted for the leadership's very weak and destructive immigration bill that doesn't do what we need to do and actually stop some of the things we're already doing. And that's not the way that you govern. We knew this special session was coming. There was no need to jam this like that. And I think these members have been put in a very bad spot because now this is on their record that they voted for this, and it's hard to explain why you voted for it because your campaign rhetoric is so much different than what's actually been passed by them. And I'll just go through some things because I think this is really, really important. We need to end catch and release in Florida. So, for example, our highway patrol pulls over an illegal alien driving drunk. They arrest, book, judge just releases them because, you know, that usually would happen with a citizen. You probably wouldn't be held without bail, but then immigration hasn't had the ability to do it. We don't want there to be bail in those situations. We want a rebuttable presumption that you're not entitled to bail, so then this way our folks can work with immigration and we can do that. The number of people that have had fatal accidents with illegal aliens driving, sometimes drunk but sometimes not, is pretty significant, sadly to say. They're angel moms, angel wives. We had one yesterday, one of the angel wives. And in every single instance I've seen, this was not the first driving infraction that the illegal alien had done. Drive drunk, slap on the wrist, release. Drive drunk second time, maybe a little harder slap on the wrist, then release. Finally, 3 or 4 DUIs later, fatal, and you can't unring that bell. So we need to have if someone's driving, they don't have a right to be in our country to begin with, and they're driving drunk, putting our people at risk. We don't wait until they kill somebody. We take action and get them instead for removal. So ending catch and release is important. The legislature refused to end catch and release. They didn't do anything on that. The one thing the legislature says that they wanted to do, and obviously I support this, is in our jails, there needs to be hand in glove working with ICE. If someone's illegally, they're there, detainers, do all this stuff. Yeah, of course, most places in Florida do, but not all. We need to require them all to do it. But in their bill, so in our bill, the reality is there's only so many ICE agents available. So you may have a criminal alien that is time to be discharged, maybe they serve their sentence, and ICE will come pick them up. Perfect, that's what works. But if ICE can't pick them up, and under this administration, they do want ICE picking them up, but maybe they can't right there, the legislature says you just have to release them. They don't provide the ability to transport. Our view is if the ICE isn't there, but you have a criminal alien, then you should have the ability, authorization, and money to transport to ICE so that they're not released into our communities. So the transport is very important. Probably the most ridiculous and indefensible part of what the legislature tried to do is they stripped the governor and all of our agencies, FHP, FDLE, all this stuff, with our authority to help enforce immigration law. and they transferred that authority to the Commissioner of Agriculture. So you literally, under their bill, would have a situation where if sheriff deputies here in Palm Beach County had, say, criminal aliens, they would not be allowed to work directly with ICE without the permission of the Commissioner of Agriculture. You got to do a mother may I. You're not allowed, and look, maybe this is unconstitutional, it's ridiculous. If there was a ridiculous clause in the Constitution, it would definitely be unconstitutional. But you have to do a mother may I to the Commissioner of Agriculture about whether you can bring in the federal immigration authorities. How ridiculous is that? How does that help us do what we need to do? And nobody elected the Commissioner of Agriculture to do the immigration stuff. I got elected by a massive margin. One of the main issues I ran on was curtailing illegal immigration. So to strip it from the governor, and I think part of this is petty, but to do the Commissioner of Agriculture is ridiculous. And let's just be honest with ourselves. One of the magnets from illegal immigration is illegal low-wage farm labor. Now, that doesn't mean every farm in Florida or even most, but we know that's one of the magnets. Well, this is an official that's got to respond to them. So it's a conflict of interest. It makes no sense to do that. That is not a sector of the economy that has been supportive of robust enforcement of immigration laws. So they're doing that. And you ask yourself, is the point of this to actually help with the removal of illegal aliens, or is it to ensure that Florida is a de facto sanctuary state for illegal aliens? If you read the way it's written, it is written to kneecap the people that are out there doing work to protect this state. And that was intentional. Yes, there was a lot of sloppiness. I don't think most members quite understood this when they had to vote on it, but that was intentional. That's designed to kneecap effective enforcement, put it in there, and then you have to do this mother may I. Again, I don't think it's constitutional, but who knows? Like, that would work its way through the courts. It's also just the fact that if you look at our executive office and agencies, there's not a single state in this country that has handled emergencies, disaster, and crises better than the state of Florida since I've been governor. We're already doing this with illegal immigration. We have stopped thousands of illegal aliens coming in on boats in the Keys and off the southeast coast of Florida, working with the Coast Guard. FDLE just did a bus of these Chinese illegal aliens down in South Florida. Florida Highway Patrol just did a big bust in Tallahassee. We're doing this as a matter of course. You're going to kneecap all of that? Create a new bureaucracy under the Department of Agriculture? No, that's hardwired to fail. That's designed to fail. So that's doing the opposite of what they told voters they would do. If you read their legislation uses the word agriculture over 30 times. The number of times it uses the term deport, 0. This is an immigration enforcement bill, and you're not using that at all, but you're using agriculture 36 times. That just shows you what we're dealing with here. So the structure of the bill is just patently ridiculous. Part of also what they do, so they go above and beyond that. Not only are they doing that, setting up this that's designed to fail, so President Trump, when he came in, he declared a national emergency for the border and for immigration. I think that was the right thing to do. I think he has the basis to do it. You've seen the border crossings go down dramatically just in the first week to 10 days. So I'm totally supportive of that. We have a state of emergency on this in Florida when they had the boats coming in, all this. We did it. We've been operating under it. The legislation goes out of its way to terminate our existing emergency operations. So the things that everyone acknowledges have been effective and have been helpful, they're saying you can't do that. So again, they're trying to neuter the enforcement that we have. We've proposed very strong penalties for transnational illegal alien gangs. The legislature didn't address that at all initially. Then they had to go back and add some stuff. So they did add some stuff that was better, but not as strong as what we've had. One of the points I make is you can go after the cartels in Mexico. You can do the fortification, the wall at the border. but you also have enticements for people to come illegally, and a lot of that is employment, illegal employment, because a lot of these folks from third world countries, they can make more here doing these jobs than they could back their home country, so they come, they work under the table, then they send money in the form of remittances back to their home country, sometimes friends, sometimes family, sometimes to cartels. Let's just be honest about how some of this stuff goes. We do have E-Verify in Florida, so you got to verify you're eligible for employment if you have 25 or more employees. Many businesses in Florida were doing it already, but not enough, and now that. So that media said if we did E-Verify, our economy would collapse. No, our economy continued to grow. But we need to strengthen it, and so we have provisions to strengthen it. The legislature is taking E-Verify away from the executive, and they're putting it in the Department of Agriculture. Or do you think that they're going to be very strong about policing E-Verify in the Department of Agriculture? I can answer that for you. The answer to that is no. So that's neutering E-Verify, something we already have in place right now to reduce the incentives to come to the state of Florida illegally. We also have a proposal to make sure that if you're sending foreign remittances, that the financial institution verifies that you're lawfully present in the United States. So you don't need to be a U.S. citizen. If you're lawfully here as a foreigner, send. But if you're illegally working, then those remittances should not. If you did that, you would dry up the incentives to come illegally because they couldn't do the remittances. Now, the legislature doesn't want to deal with remittances at all. We also deal with voting. You know, you don't have to certify that you're a U.S. citizen. We want to have something on the voter registration certifying you're a U.S. citizen. That's what Florida's Constitution requires. If you're not a citizen, you can't vote here. Certify that. And then if you register and you're here illegally or you're a foreigner, then you can be prosecuted with strong penalties at the registration stage. We don't have that in law specifically for voter registration. And so the issue is we have prosecuted illegal aliens for voting in Florida since I've been governor, but once the election happens, you prosecute them 6 months later, the vote counts. There's no way you can unring that bell. If you have we've had elections here determined by 12, 30, 50 votes in some of these local races. You can't. So if you do it at the front end, that's the deterrent that you need. We do that. Legislature doesn't get that done. Now, of all the things that we've talked about, they're all important. The most important is enlisting state and local to assist what the federal government and the Trump administration is trying to get done. Their executive orders are inviting this. Their executive orders include abilities to deputize our state and local law enforcement to be able to exercise the power that an immigration officer and ICE agent would be able to do. And so we just want to take advantage of that and make sure our folks are able to really be a force multiplier. So these programs that the feds have, we want local and state participating in that. Now, some of them, Sheriff Bradshaw would want to do that anyways. There's some others that would want to. There's some that want to be sanctuary. We're not going to let you do that. We're not a sanctuary state. I'd say most folks in both sheriff and police, they're not sanctuary, but they just let the feds do their thing. They're not going to stop, but they don't really want to compliment. That's not going to get the job done because this bleeds into normal crime. It bleeds into our schools, bleeds into healthcare, bleeds into quality of life. So we want participation, and we're going to do, and we want to be able to hold the people accountable who are required to participate in this really, really significant and historic mission. So what we've proposed is doing what folks had campaigned on. It will lead to hand-in-glove working with the Trump administration, and it will lead to more removal of illegal aliens from the state of Florida. What the legislature is doing is hampering the ability of our state and local agencies to get the job done with respect to illegal immigration. And I think, no question, it will lead to the removal of fewer illegal aliens than we're currently doing right now because of how they're hamstringing state and local and really can totally bottle it up in the Department of Agriculture. So the folks who have been responding, I asked Mike, because Mike stood strong against what the leadership was doing, and he embraced what we had proposed, which is what all these Republicans ran on. I mean, let's just be clear. And I was like, you must be getting really positive. And he says it's like 99-1 or more positive for him, saying we're not going to be fooled again. We're going to get this right. And I know the legislators who vote for it, they're getting really negative feedback. I have never seen this type of negative feedback. So here's the thing. We have a chance to get it done. We have a chance to do it right. Just do what you campaigned on. Have policies that are consistent with what you told voters. And honestly, if you campaigned for office saying you were going to be tough on illegal immigration and the voter asked you, well, what do you propose? And your answer was, we're going to strip the governor of enforcement authority and transfer to the Department of Agriculture. If that's what you told voters you would do, then you know what? God bless you. But I can tell you, not one of these guys ran on that platform. Not one of these guys ran saying they were going to terminate all operations that we're currently doing at the state level under the state of emergency. Not one of them said that. So be true to what you said in your campaign literature and your speeches, and deliver on this opportunity. The president has promised that he would have the largest alien removal program in the history of the United States. If you look at what they're doing now, obviously there were these really serious criminal aliens that Biden knew about, and they just let roam around. So they're plucking these guys and getting them out, which is 100% appropriate. But if you look at the number of arrests on a daily basis, it's 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100. Extrapolate that out for 4 years, you're looking at about 1.5 million. Now, I do think they're going to up the pace. But I mean, just in the last 4 years, we probably had 10 illegal aliens come into the United States. So there's no way you're going to be able to fulfill the mandate if you don't have positive cooperation between state, local, and our federal partners. So that's what we have to get done, and I'm confident that we are going to be able to do it. So I want to send it around and let our guests here speak, and we'll start down at the end with Mark Glass, Commissioner of FDLE.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for letting me be here today, and thank you to federal partners and local partners here of law enforcement. I just want to commend you for all the hard work that you do. We work great hand in hand with you each and every day. I want to tip a hat to Sheriff Bradshaw. Florida has a regional domestic security task force that how we do domestic security and immigration. It's been in our state statutes since 2001 after 9/11. And RDSTF 7, which is the chair, is Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, has been one of the best partners I could ever have on the Domestic Security Oversight Council and the RDSTF for this local area, and he's been a great, great partner. So thank you, Sheriff, on that one. Also, I just want to say a little history. I just kind of told you about 943. That's where we get our authority from, which is domestic security and immigration. Since then, I can tell you, this is not anything new. We've been working on this a lot. Since Governor DeSantis has come in, and since I got appointed in almost 3 years ago, Governor, this is one of the things we want to make sure we do right. We want to do it lawfully. We want to make sure we follow the letter of the law, and we did. And we constantly watched as sentinels for this great state of what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you that we had buses of children coming in the middle of the night, and it wasn't through DHS. That was through HHS, Health and Human Services. We could not get any information from them whatsoever. These are illegal children, illegal aliens that are children that were coming in at night. What does that do for us in our Regional Domestic Security Task Force? That increases no matter where they go. We do not know whether we cannot give them health and services. We do not know if the schools are going to be increased. We do not know if the calls for services for law enforcement is going to be increased. We had no idea. And also, too, our DCF partners had no idea. So they were on federal contracts coming in and out. And if it was such a great thing, why do they do it in the middle of the night? Why didn't you just, hey, we're doing such a great thing, let's show what we're doing, really helping these children. We heard on television and the reports that they can't find 300,000, I think it was, I cannot remember, it's a high number of children, but since the Trump administration's got in, they've already said they've already contacted 70 to 80,000. I suggest probably call HHS. They probably got the numbers where that's at. I will tell you, in the domestic security landscape, though, one of the things we've been doing, we cannot do this without you. Everything that we've done for immigration, we cannot do without our state and local partners and our federal partners. And no matter what happens in D.C., we don't care. You gentlemen have been great partners, and we have worked hand in hand with you, and y'all have helped us so much on everything we've been able to do. So thank you, federal partners. Now, my background, I came from DHS. I'm a plank owner of DHS, and I was worked in the intelligence field in doing counterterrorism. So when we have so much illegal immigration coming into our state, and we know it, we're bound to have a lot more crime, a lot more terrorist activity. It's just the way it is. The number 2 place, and this is from DHS, the number 2 place for all destinations where they want to come is the state of Florida. That's what they're declaring. We're behind New York. Let me tell you, I love Florida first, but I do not want to be first in that arena. And I think what we're doing here and what the governor's been putting together will help deter that, so we will not be the number 2 spot. We will go down drastically. I want to get out of the top 10 where we're not a destination state. Now, with that, I had the honor of going out to the southwest border with the governor, and he charged me to take out 150 law enforcement personnel to go help DPS out there on the EMAC. We did Operation Lone Star. Now, I got to go out there, see it, walk it, work it. We're not talking about a lot of families coming over, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about military-aged men. I interviewed a lot of them, and the ones I was interviewing were deported 3 or 4 times. They had battery on LEO charges. They had rape. They had all other sorts of type of really bad things. We also saw children that we know that was not their parents, but we couldn't prove it. They were just acting like it was their kid. They were just muling the child through the gates. Let me tell you, that is the worst thing we ever want to happen in our great state. The governor was also executive order for Operation Vigilant Sentry, a federal program, a federal operation that we integrated in to keep the illegal aliens from coming on our shores. We were getting so good at it, Governor. I will tell you, the chatter from the folks that we were watching on Intel was telling people, do not waste your money, do not come now. The state of Florida is out there working. And that's a testament to Sheriff Bradshaw's capability he has here all the way around through Miami-Dade into the Key West. We are doing great work here. We've been working highway interdictions jointly with Florida Highway Patrol, interviewing, interdicting, stopping drugs coming in. We've been doing E-Verify, as the governor said. We have over 21,000 employee records that FDLE has gone through, and over 89 E-Verify audits at this time. Our state assistant fentanyl eradication initiative, one of the best criminal justice programs the governor put forth in stopping those type of gang activity, with the drugs coming over, the fentanyl, going against the cartel. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made over 1,100 arrests in that. Nearly 300 pounds of fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, drugs, seized over $2.9 million in cash and 375 firearms, and over 50 vehicles seized. Guess what? There was illegals involved in this. So that would put a hinder on some of us working sources, and that we cannot work sources without asking. So this is where we already have a system in place. Secure Florida elections. We just stopped a guy, 6 counts of voting, foreign national, 6 counts of voting illegally, 6-time felon on a criminal alien for voting crimes. We had him pay petitioners, 20 counts. This is happening every day in our state that due to the partnerships we have with our state, local, and federal partners, we are putting a stop to it. And Governor, thank you for putting those initiatives to us. Operation 13 Tiers we did on the Sewer 13 gang. Guess what? They weren't legal. They were not legal. We did 25 gang members were arrested, and we was able to get that out of our prisons. That was happening in our state. We also, with the Sheriff's Association and working with legislation, we were able to get a lot of rapid DNA put in. So I know we had an incident with rapid DNA. We were able to swab 2 people that got in for drunk driving, which we always have that, that comes in, illegal aliens do that. And next thing you know, we get a CODIS hit. FDLA worked a CODIS hit, and we were 2 of them separate, but in the same jail, had 2 rape charges of forcible rape out in California. They popped hot on that one. So we were able to get that to our ICE officials. They were able to expedite, get them deported out of the country after their DUI charge. So these are some of the things we do in domestic security and in investigations, and also with immigration enforcement. But like I said, we cannot do it without you. You heard the governor talk about the Chinese nationals just recently down in Coral Gables. Chief Hudak, who is a wonderful partner, as another chief that's working with us on a day-to-day, great partner. We were able to stop, we work in HSI. We are FDLA Florida agents, special agents are working with HSI agents, and we have helped and assist them on wrapping up. We just did 8 illegal. We had horrific crimes ranging from sexual offenses against children, domestic violence, and fleeing and evading law enforcement. We just wrapped them up. We got more operations in the hopper with HSI, and I want to say thank you for that. It's good to have, since President Trump's been in, it's good to have the cuffs off where we can actually do stuff again, so I really do want to say thanks. Some of the other things we're looking at, just in ICE releases, they have to into our communities because there's no beds, right? So you have to keep the worst of the worst, and then you have to release. That's just the way it is. So just kind of let you know, we had 315 releases, and we posted something on our website, if you'll see this. Florida must lead on legal immigration. Let me just tell you about the 315 that got released in 2024. 94% of the criminal aliens released into our state had one or more violent crimes in their criminal history. 12% of the aliens released were sexual predators or had committed sexual assault. 29% of criminal aliens released are convicted of drug offenders, and 3% of the criminal aliens released were federally charged with illegal reentry to the U.S., so they've done it over and over again. And out of that, we're 28 homicide charges, 85 sex offense charges, 35 trafficking charges, 350 federal charges, 155 weapons charges, 226 charges, drug charges, 47 robbery charges, and it goes on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a problem. As I said in Chapter 943, you have natural disaster, you have man-made disaster. This is a man-made disaster, and we are already poised and ready to tackle a man-made disaster like this. We have momentum right now. Let's not change our momentum. We keep moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. Governor, thank you for having me here today.
Yep. Okay. Rep. Caruso.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for inviting me here to join you today, and to all the service officers out in front here, thank you for your service. And you know, we've got a big problem here. I'm proud of your leadership, Governor. You have stood strong on this key issue here. You know, simply, we've got the bill that they passed in the Florida legislature was HB 1B. Okay, they called it the Trump Act. It wasn't, but HB 1B failed the objectives that were given by mandate on November 5th to the legislators, to all the whole country. And simply put, it puts handcuffs, ironically, on FDLE. It puts handcuffs on the sheriff departments, put handcuffs on all the municipal, county, and state law enforcement agencies, and that's sad in order to fight immigration, illegal immigration. This bill was just a facade to make members think, when I say Florida House members think, that they were actually doing something to combat illegal immigration. It was a facade to make everyone think that they were doing something to deport illegal aliens with criminal backgrounds. It was a facade to make people think that they would be safer in their homes, in their communities, and it's not. But how can they be safer, as the governor said, if the word deport or deportation is not mentioned one time in the bill? And then what about enforcement? No, what this bill does, it strips out enforcement and instead calls for a lot of reporting. They want to know, they want to report on the number of law enforcement agencies that haven't signed up to 87G agreements with ICE. They want to know not just why, but how many law enforcement agencies. They want reports on that. It calls for reports, lots of pages on reports. And then it calls for the counting of beds. And personally, I don't want to count beds. The only thing I want to count is how many illegal immigrants are locked up and how many are shipped out back home to their countries. And that's all I want to count. You know, I was speaking to FHP Director Dave Kerner, and he said that HB1B, that bill, will have a chilling effect, a paralysis on our daily operations in trying to combat illegal immigration. That's harsh words. He just didn't throw them out there. Those are harsh words. He said it would be destructive. You know, people ask me, why did the legislature pass this bill if that's the situation? If this bill's so bad, why did they pass it? You know, I spoke to a lot of the representatives, a lot, on the House floor. And now that we've done on the House floor, back home, I made a lot of phone calls. I haven't found one legislator, not one, that has read the entire bill. Not one legislature. We were given the bill that we voted on approximately 20 to 25 minutes before we had to vote on it. Now, I had done an analysis of it because I saw it coming. But is that the kind of governance we want to have? Where, as Nancy Pelosi once said, we need to pass the bill before we vote on the bill? Because, I mean, before we read the bill, we have to vote on the bill before we read the bill? Because that's what we did. I knew what was in the bill, nothing. You know, and why does this come up? Why would they do such a thing? Let me tell you, there's such a hostile, oppressive environment in the Florida House that's brought on by leadership, brought on by the Speaker of the House, that if you don't fall in lockstep with them, there'll be consequences. Okay? Consequences. Your bills won't be heard in committee. Your appropriations will die. Everything you've worked so hard for will be gone in a flash. And that's the oppressive environment that's there, and that's why they all fall in line. And it's sad, because that's not the way we should work. We each got elected by our constituents back home, and we should represent them. We don't represent, leadership didn't vote us in. The Speaker of the House didn't vote us in. We should represent our constituents back home. But that's not happening in the Florida House these days. You know, what's going on here is a dogfight. And we know in a dogfight, the thing that gets damaged the worst, the thing that gets harmed the most, is what the dogs are fighting over. And in this case, what they're fighting over is not a chew toy. They're fighting over the desires of Floridians across the state. And that's wrong, and that's sad. And I'm so proud of the governor for standing so strong. I'm so proud of Commissioner Glass and Sheriff Bradshaw for standing here today to let Palm Beach County know we will not stand down on this issue. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Sheriff.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate everything that you do. I'm going to be short to the point, like I always am. People know that. But I think there's a few things for people to be reminded of. First of all, I don't make the laws. I enforce them. I trust the governor to do the right thing to protect the people in this state. That's what he's always done since he got elected. And I'm hoping at the end of the day, the people in the legislature will do the right thing also. You know, we have a very, very strong enforcement effort out here. Guess what? Our border is the ocean. You can't put up a fence. We're the fence. And our effort out there has been fantastic. We have worked with ICE, the Coast Guard, the Navy, and Border Patrol for years. Even after those idiots in Washington tried to stop all this, we've kept our effort up. We get about 95% of these people before they even put a foot in this state. And you know why that's good? Because they don't get a damn gift card, a cell phone, and get to go stay in a hotel. We give them back to the Coast Guard or the Navy, and they take them back where they came from. So that's why it's so important, because if they get in here, they're going to do bad things. We've already got people in our jails that snuck across the border in Mexico that committed serious, serious crimes against young females that should have never happened. You talk to their families, they go, why does this happen? Why are these people here? You don't have an answer for that. And lots of times we don't know how these bad guys are here until they do something wrong. And if you don't think that the TDA gang, Aragua gang, is not in Florida, guess what, folks? 2 of them are in Miami. We know that. And they're not going to stay down there. They go back and forth every place. So this enforcement effort and to have in place the right law for us to enforce and have the resources to do it, all that does is protect the community. And I can tell you this, Governor, without a doubt, I ain't asking permission to go get these bad guys from anywhere. We're going to keep on doing what we're doing to enforce those laws to keep the people safe in this county. Thanks, Governor.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And, these boats, when you have illegals coming on some of these boats, I mean, I've seen some of these busts, probably Palm Beaches probably include, I know the Keys, others, sometimes there'll be firearms, narcotics. I mean, it's really, really dangerous stuff. So those maritime operations are really, really important. This bill that the legislature is trying to do basically ends those. It terminates the states because ours are done under the state of emergency, and would only allow Sheriff Bradshaw to do it if he does a mother may I to the agriculture commissioner. And that's not right, that doesn't make sense, and that's not something that we need to get done. So this is important for quality of life, for public safety, rule of law, helping to fulfill a historic mandate that the voters gave in November. But it's also just a time, particularly with Republicans, to just, be true to what you said. Do what people expected you to do, what you told them. And what I found in this, if you are doing what you said you'd do, then even people that didn't vote for you will respect that, because you laid it out and then you went in and did it and got it done. I think these guys get in trouble when they say one thing back home and then they do something different in the Capitol. That's where you get into trouble. So just do what you said you were going to do. Yes, sir. Question? Yep.
Just trying to clear things up. Speaker Perez yesterday said that he's willing to take a call from your office. Actually,
exactly. So this is all, no, it's not. It's just these are small, petty things. I have reached out prior to the session, especially, and didn't get a response. But here's the thing: I don't need him to show up in my office or this or that. I just need to get the job done for the people, right? I don't need to get any attention. I don't need to get any fanfare. I don't need to get any credit for this. I hope that the legislature would listen to the constituents, listen to the outcry, come up with really strong proposals, outdo me, do better than me, and then you guys get the credit. I don't need any credit. Let's just get the job done. And I think too much of what you see, written here or there is all about kind of like, inside baseball with these politicians maneuvering this, that, the other thing. Who cares? Honestly, who cares about any of that? What you care about is we've got a mission. Voters have charged us with it. Are we putting their issues and interests first? Or are you worried about other diversions? And so we're laser focused on this. The reality is they did not want to do this session. They did not want to, they didn't communicate any feedback about all of our proposals, which we put out weeks in advance. And that's fine. They don't have to. But we had a great roadmap. It wasn't something we just pulled out of our hat. I mean, these are some of the best people in the country that have thought hard about these issues, about how can you maximize working coordination, state and local with federal when it comes to enforcing immigration law, interior operations, and removal operations. This is also similar. We knew the executive orders were coming out. So we were doing all that. And so that's what it is. The folks that have seen both, when they look at the details, it's overwhelming that they prefer our approach, and it's not because it's me, it's because the policies will work. The policies are strong. The problem with their bill is not because it's them per se, it's not because I'm opposing it, it's because the policies are not the policies they ran on. The policies will not work, and in fact, the policies will undercut some of the things we are already doing. Not one of these guys in Republican ran saying that they wanted to create legislation to make Florida a backdoor sanctuary state, which is what it does. Because if you have these boats coming in, if this bill passes, Sheriff Bradshaw's got to go to the Commissioner of Agriculture to get approval to be able to work with, and who knows, maybe the Commissioner of Agriculture is a liberal Democrat who likes open borders like we had a couple years ago. You have no idea. I'm sorry, Palm Beach County elected Rick to be the sheriff. He doesn't need a mother may I from the Commissioner of Agriculture. So it just doesn't work. It's not good policy, but let's focus on getting the job done, and that's what it's all about. Yep.
Do you think this is a political ploy, considering he's got 2026 gubernatorial aspirations?
And who's this about? Well, you'll have to ask the Senate. I mean, obviously, our Commissioner of Agriculture exercises a lot of influence over those guys. He had been Senate President. I'm not exactly sure of the dynamics, but I know he has a big hand in anything that goes on over there. I don't know if he asked for this to be at the Department of Agriculture. I don't know if they just thought, but I would say anybody wants to run for governor, if you're not willing to come out now and oppose this swampy piece of legislation, you are not going to get elected governor in this state. I can guarantee it. This is hot. This is something that people remember. And so if you're not willing to come out and say this is wrong, we need to be strong, you can do it, but it isn't going to be successful. That goes for anybody who's thinking about doing it. And so this is really important that people speak out now so that we can get this right. So I can't speak for him. I don't know what his role was in this. I don't know if he wanted it at the Department of Agriculture. Maybe people just wanted to give it to him. So you have to ask him that. But the reality is the effect of their legislation is to neuter what we're doing. The effect of their legislation is to create a bottleneck, to make it more difficult for the removal of illegal aliens. That is contrary, directly contrary, to the mandate that voters provided in November, and quite frankly, the mandate voters provided here in Florida a couple of Novembers ago when I was at the top of the ticket. And so now's the time to speak up. Now's the time to be strong. But I can tell you, and you follow these primaries, if you are running in the primary with this thing around your neck, you are dead on arrival. Yep.
Wilkin Brutus with WLRN, South Florida's NPR. Among many of your measures, you talked about possibly eliminating remittances. Can you further elaborate on that?
Eliminating what? I'm sorry.
Remittances.
What?
Remittances.
Oh, remittances. Okay. So it's not eliminating. It would be remittances would be subject to like an E-Verify. So you have to get authorization. You have to show you're authorized to work to get hired in the first place with an E-Verify. It would basically be the same thing to send the remittance, right? Because if you're not here lawfully, then allowing to send the remittance, that creates an incentive for people to work illegally. If you can't send the remittance because of illegal labor, then that dries up a big part of the incentive to come. So yes, U.S. citizens can send remittances. Legal foreign residents or workers on visas can send remittances. It's the illegal alien that would have to show that they have a right to be, and obviously they wouldn't be able to do it, so then you wouldn't send the remittances there. I think it's a huge part to remove that enticement from this.
Are they from Central America, South America, even Mexico?
We just did, FDLE just did a Chinese bust. You had Chinese illegal aliens. In fact, there were 2 Chinese busts within the last week down in South Florida. Clearly, we are probably the top destination for Caribbean countries. When you have the boats, Cuba still sends some, Bahamas, Haiti, all that happens. But, as Mark said, when Biden first got in and opened the border, I sent these guys over to help Texas, and I knew Florida would be impacted, don't get me wrong, and that's why we did it. But it was like 40% of them coming across, they'd be asked when they were apprehended, where do you want to go? And 40% of them mentioned Florida. Not only Florida, they'd have a couple, but 40%. I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? So we've had people come, from all over the world and end up in the state of Florida under the Biden administration. That's just the reality. When we were down at the border, when I did the first trip, I was thinking, probably a lot of Mexicans. I actually did not see a single Mexican crossing the border when I was there. I saw some from Central America, but there were people from like Northern Africa, the Middle East, Russia. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? Because think about it. Remember when 9/11? Those hijackers, they got visas to train, and they were here. Visas expired. They could have potentially been removed. At least some of them could have been. But if someone wanted to do a 9/11 or any type of terrorist attack, they wouldn't even bother trying to get a visa. The last 4 years, you just go right across the border. In fact, you can log on to the CB1 app. Trump got rid of it, but you can log on, and they'll give you permission to come in unlawfully, basically. So it's really skewed things, and it went from, the illegal migration used to be, like when they did the Reagan amnesty, it was mostly people coming from Mexico, right? And a lot of it for labor needs. Then you start to see a little bit of change, but then most recently, I think with Biden, it's all over the world. I mean, you have people from Haiti because we have the boats and you can stop. And as Rick said, if we stop the boat before they get to the shore, they get immediately sent back by the Coast Guard. There's no paperwork, no proceedings that happen. If they get to the shore, it becomes a little more complicated. But so you started to see Haitians, instead of trying to take a boat to Florida, they would fly to Mexico or Central America, cross the border to Mexico, and then try to come to Florida that way. It was easier to do that than to just take a boat in. So that created huge negative incentives, and I think the character in terms of where the illegal aliens are coming from are much broader from the last 4 years than they had been previously. And I've had folks in Florida, we probably have more retired special forces in Florida than any state in the country. And I've talked with some of these guys, and so these are folks that were born and bred in the GWAT, Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, a lot of them did 20 years, and they were in the sandbox all the time. So they still have a lot of connections in places like Afghanistan. And what they said was when Biden pulled out, he left all the equipment there, Taliban took over, they restarted the terrorist training camps. And what they're basically instructing people to do is to go through the southern border of the U.S. and then conduct operations here, not necessarily on a scale of 9/11, but in some respects operations that may even be more paralyzing to society, because 9/11 was like a frontal attack we knew we had to do. Can you imagine what happened if you had some of these cells with illegal alien terrorists and you had like 7 different medium-sized communities around the United States, and they went in and just created attacks simultaneously? People would be paralyzed. People would freak people out. So that's the training that's going on. And I've said, and I hope I'm wrong, but you are going to see attacks in this country that are going to emanate from the migration we saw over that 4-year period. It's just inevitable. You can't have that many people from all over the world coming and not have really serious negative impacts.
Earlier you said that the bill has, thank you. The bill is passed. Representative Mike Caruso said essentially law enforcement is handicapped.
The bill's not going to be signed into law.
It's not going to be signed into law, but
we're going to veto the legislation. And look, I go by kind of the merits of the legislation. I mean, public opinion can vacillate. Some of my best decisions I've made as governor, opening the state during COVID, kids in school, all that, were not popular at the time, but they were the right ones. So it's not, you don't just put your finger in the wind. But I will tell you this, of any piece of legislation that I've contemplated, this is the most overwhelming response in favor of veto. Overwhelming response. And even if that wasn't true, I would do it because the merits are indefensible. But that just shows you. So then the question is, we know people don't want this, what they do. We know that my proposals have a lot of favorable, but here's the thing. You got to get the job done. You got to get the job done. So they have, they're going to be back in their communities throughout the week and weekend. And I know a lot of these constituents want to talk to their representatives, talk to their senators. You know, unfortunately, some of these folks, sometimes their offices aren't answering the phone calls or they're not responding to their constituents. They think, oh, well, you know, it'll just kind of go away. On this issue, it's not going away. On this issue, you owe these folks an explanation for your actions. You owe an explanation for why you voted the way you did. And you owe an explanation if your vote was contrary to how you campaigned. You owe an explanation there. So my hope is that the members that supported the legislation, you know, Mike doesn't have to worry. They're cheering him everywhere he goes because he stood up against this. The senators in the Florida Senate who stood up against it, you know, they're like heroes. Just huge support they're getting. But the ones that voted for it, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to engage with your constituents. And what I think will happen is these folks are going to look at it. They're going to recognize that this is not what the people want. And I think they're going to have a renewed sense of, you know what, let's get it done. And it's not about pride of ownership. It's not about internal politics. It's not about governor versus legislature, all that. Because what I told Mike and some of these other legislatures, I said, honestly, you know, it's like you don't have to be with me as the governor. You don't have to be with your leadership in your chamber, quote unquote. Be with the good policy. Side with the good policy. If your chamber is producing superior policy than something that I'm advocating, there's nothing wrong with doing it. You don't have to be, quote, with the governor at that point. But if we're advocating better policy and your chamber's advocating poor policy, there's nothing at all wrong with telling your leadership, this ain't cutting it. This isn't going to work. So I do think we're going to land the plane, but I do think we're going to see, you know, how these folks are able to talk to their constituents. But I have never seen a reaction this negative, especially as they find out what's actually in. I mean, think about it. Would any of you want to make a major decision in your life if you had to go through 80-some pages in 30 minutes? Would any of you feel comfortable going through 80 pages in 30 minutes and then having to make a really significant decision that's going to impact you and your family in a big way? Not a single person, I don't see any hands, not a single person would think that's acceptable. And yet these guys had a half an hour to read the bill. They didn't know a lot of the stuff that was in here. They weren't allowed to vote on amendments. You guys weren't allowed to offer anything to be able to do it. They weren't even allowed to do a recorded vote on gaveling out the governor's special session. Mike tried to do it and they ignored him. So, you know, when you do things like that, voters do not appreciate it. You had time to be thorough on this. You had time to get it right. You had 2 weeks' notice and a slew of proposals by the governor that you could have worked off of, or at least given us feedback on it, because I'm fine. Look, politics, when you're doing this, you know, it's not just, in contrary to what some people think, it's not like even though, because we've accomplished so much, oh, governor just gets you on. We have to work for all this. I've got a lot of great things done that's 90% of what I wanted. Sometimes 95. Sometimes you get everything, but that's just the art of it. And so fine, but there's got to be that give and take, and we didn't have that leading into the session. I would just add that there's people that will say, oh, well, the legislature doesn't want to support the governor, or this is like so new. It's not new. You go back a couple years, we had redistricting. They wanted to do, the legislative leaders, they wanted to do a congressional map that had gerrymandered, what I thought were unconstitutional districts. There was no reason to do that. They were Republican legislature, but it would have benefited Democrats and given them more seats. Now, that wasn't the reason for the opposition. It was a constitutional thing, but they were going so full bore to try to get this map done, and I vetoed their map. And we had to do a special session of the Florida legislature, and they passed a map that has been upheld in the courts, that's constitutional, but had they gotten their way, you would have Democrats in charge of the U.S. House of Representatives right now based on that. I mean, that happened here. So this isn't like it's anything new. This is something that happens from time to time. And And again, the reason why I was successful at landing that plane was not because I'm so great or anything. It's because I was standing for what the voters wanted to see. And they were not standing for what our voters who sent them there wanted to do. So be true to the people that sent you there. Listen to their concerns. Do not try to pull the wool over their eyes. Do not give them song and dance. Answer these questions that they have for you. And I hope that we'll end up in a position where people are just honest with their constituents, because we do have an undercurrent of folks, particularly in Republicans, who campaign so hard against the illegal immigration. They're going to be tough. They're going to do all this stuff and everything. But in reality, you know, they want to preserve a lot of illegal foreign labor. They do. It's a corporatist thing. Just be honest and say that that's something that matters to you. Now, I disagree with it. I think most voters will. But if you do that and then vote that way, what am I going to do at that point? It's only when you vote, when you campaign one way and vote the other. So we're going to get it on. One more. Yes.
Governor, I want to talk about TPS. Once TPS ends for Venezuelans, Haitians, and other in April, will the state seek to fine or imprison Floridians who still hire these people that were working legally? Like after TPS, after it's done?
So I think it's going to be more about federal enforcement and how they do it. I want us to be assisting the feds and how they want to work that out. You know, the grant of TPS was not lawful. Let's just be honest when Biden did that. And so I think what the Trump administration is doing is just consistent with what the law is, and I think they're making the right decision. But I would imagine that there would be some type of guidance that gets put out about how you're transitioning out of this, and we're going to work with these our federal partners on this. You know, we are not a sanctuary state, in spite of what the legislature is trying to do here. We don't allow sanctuary cities, so they can expect cooperation from our state agencies and our local agencies and how they're approaching this very important task of enforcing the law. Okay, everybody, thanks so much. God bless. See you later.